Welcome, everyone. This is the Brighter Days, Darker Nights live podcast, and we are here with Roudy, the founder of VivaRays. You had a question for me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, all good with my microphone? Sounds is clear?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. It's super clear. Very good. Okay. So welcome, everyone. And today I have a special guest here, and I'm excited to share and learn, and for you all to also get to hear some of the stories. So one of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about today that was my vision healing journey that I am still on. And I got glasses put on me when I was in 5th grade, and eventually my vision deteriorated so much that by the time I was in high school, I was told that the optometrist, he would dial my prescription up and my vision wouldn't get any better, and he would drop it back down and it wouldn't get any better. And he was like, well, your vision's uncorrectable. You can't have 20/20. So fast forward a few years to when I met the man who eventually became my husband, and we've now been married for a good long time. We have 5 children together, but in the early days, and it was just the two of us going along. We were musicians, and he was learning about healing his eyes. So he had come across this old book about the Bates method, and so we were doing eye palming and all this stuff. And anyways, I started losing diopters when I go to the optometrist. So he's almost done now. We've been working on this for, over 15 years together. He's almost done. His lenses have hardly any prescription. I
Wow.
still have a lot. But after the darkness and eye palming, the other thing we noticed was the UV light. And so every summer, our vision would improve. And then in winter, it would kind of pause. And then the next summer, because we have that strong season, we're not at the equator. And
Mm,
so we noticed the UV was really helping our vision improve, but any lenses have the UV blocking. It's built in. You can't get lenses without, until I found VivaRays, which allows 60% pass through on their prescription lenses. So I was absolutely thrilled when I was cruising through your website when Asher reached out and was like, hey, would you be interested in being a partner for our light optimization glasses? And when I saw what you're doing, I was like, yes, 100%. So I can't wait for mine to get here. I'm going to be switching over to those because, yeah, the UV light has actually made a huge difference, even though the optometrists all say, oh, UV doesn't pass through the lens anyways. There's obviously
mm.
something going on. And I have my own proof of what's been happening. So anyways, thank you. And I'm glad that you're here today to share. And yeah, would love to hear how you came up with that when you're like, because it's kind of it's very different in the world of glasses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's really fascinating, and I think a lot more people need to hear about it because oftentimes many people have the belief that they could not heal their eyes. And I have seen from firsthand experience with many of our clients, as well as lots of our friends who have adopted the circadian lifestyle, that this was absolutely reversible. That pretty much
Hmm.
any prescription was pretty much reversible. And one of my mentors and really awesome friends, his name is Dr. Jacob Liberman, and he's written a book called "Take Off Your Glasses So You Can See." And
I've
and
heard of
and, and
that.
yeah, so the whole premise there is that essentially light is one of the most fundamental forces that program our mitochondria. And we'll get into this. I mean, the eyes are highly dense with mitochondria. So it becomes a question of are you in a light environment that is supporting those mitochondria to regenerate? Yes or no? And
Hmm.
if not, then it becomes absolutely important to do so. But to circle back to how I started all of this, going back to in time, 1 a.m., March 2017, I was literally laying down in bed in our dark basement in Canada, scrolling through my phone. And the blue light from my phone is literally like shining on my face. And my eyes are literally burning. And I'm feeling quite drained, like exhausted, but I'm wired and I can't stop scrolling.
Hmm.
Suddenly, a video popped up on my feed. I almost skipped it. When you're scrolling, you're like a scroller, so you skip pretty much everything. But then something magnetized me to this video, and I read artificial light is killing us. And I'm sitting there listening to Dr. Jack Kruse, and everything he's saying is literally flying over my head. My brain is so foggy, I can't understand anything. But then I wake up the second day, and there's this one sentence that keeps echoing in my mind. You can't get healthy in the same light environment that made you sick. And I was like, wow. I took a moment and I paused and I asked myself, could this be the reason for everything I've been going through?
Mm.
The lack of energy, the constant fatigue, the depression.
Mhm.
And this question led me to an 8-year odyssey where I became absolutely obsessed about studying the light problem.
Mhm.
And I even founded VivaRays to solve it. And I don't know about you, you may agree, but usually when I start talking to people about the light problem, most people think, oh, he's probably going to talk about how the blue light from the phones hurt our eyes. And I'm like, this is like just like a very superficial aspect on how to look at light. And like the light problem is a lot more nuanced than
Mhm.
avoiding screens 1 hour before bedtime or even wearing some cheap blue light blocking glasses during the day and calling it a day.
Yeah.
And in my personal experience and on this journey, the biggest realization that I had is that the quality of our life is entirely dependent on the quality of the spectrum of light that hits our eyes every single day. And having this realization, I'm like, oh man, I wish somebody had understood this when I was a little kid at school.
Mhm.
I had a terrible time growing up as a kid in Lebanon. My experience was that my parents had brought me to this prison cell. My teachers started asking me to memorize and repeat useless information. And they decided to torture me so much so that they put me under fluorescent lighting that they were frying my brain cell on the inside out. And I'm like, what? Like, what's going on? Like, what did I do? Like, I'm not, I'm not a freaking criminal. Like, why are you punishing me though? Like, so bad. And
Yeah.
on the other side of this, like, we'll have like a 15-minute break throughout the 8 hour of being tortured. And finally, I have some time to go outside. I go outside. I'm sitting in nature, and I'm literally tuning in, and I'm hearing like with my inner ears like beautiful rhythms that are inspiring me and bringing me back to myself. And I'm like out of sudden writing poetry and understanding about the physics of light and magnetism. And nature is teaching me about her own physics in her own way. And then suddenly they pull me back and they put me back in the classroom. And this teacher is literally asking me like which year the Waterloo War happened. And if I can't answer this, is like, what, come on, you're not a smart kid. I'm like, how is that related to being smart? So eventually I had to develop a strategy. And by the time I was 17, I was asked to leave 7 different schools because that was like becoming a rebellious kid was my only way of getting kicked out and exiting that prison. And as I grew older, something shifted within me because I became completely exhausted from fighting and resisting. And there come a point that I literally gave up on myself. So I turned into a creature of the night. I became a night owl, staying up very late every night, scrolling on social media, doing drugs, living only to party, essentially. And then I'll end up waking up the second day low on energy and unmotivated all day long. And the funny part is my surrounding would look at me and they see an engineer or somebody who's in engineering school. They see a young, fit, muscular engineer and they'll think, oh, he got it all, like he got it together. But if you zoom in on the inside, I was drowning. And I completely lost connection with myself, with why I'm here, and my health started declining. And no matter what I tried, like martial arts, climbing freezing mountains with Wim Hof, minus 20 degrees, trying every diet imaginable. Like I literally went veganism, then ketosis, then carnivore, then ancestral diet. And I was literally taking all the best adaptogens and supplements that every health expert said this is a must in order
Mhm.
to heal. And
Mhm.
the more I took these things, the more I felt hopeless because nothing literally was changing in my world.
Mhm.
A- And at that point, I'm like, all right, if every health expert said that this is the path, and I'm doing everything that they're telling me, but nothing is changing, then I must be broken on the inside. Like there must be something wrong with me. So I started like literally internalizing this idea. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just such a warning for the families who have kids who are in school these days because they still have those lights. I think I still drive by the high school that I went to because I ended up moving back to my hometown to raise my family, but I'm not putting my kids in school. We're homeschooling. But it was always this like legend and what you said, um, I never looked up to see if this is true or not, but what everyone told me was that the architects who designed our local high school also designed prisons. That
Mm,
was all in their portfolio. So I don't know if that's true or not, but everyone said this is literally a prison. So you saying that like you're being treated like a criminal, like the bells and the timing and this is when you eat, and this is when you go to the bathroom, and this is when you go outside, and this is learning. And yeah, so hearing your story going through there and the hopelessness and how you ended up acting out from all of that is something that a lot of families are still struggling with their kids who are still in that stage of younger youth. So I'm excited to get to the next part of your story so that we can hear the hope on the other side because I know that you're not still in that. I can look at you and see that you're not still in that state now.
yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised that the architects who designed the prison are exactly the same architect who designed the school because there's so many similarities. If you look at even the bus where the students get transported, they look exactly like the bus where prisoners are getting transported. And then you look at the table where everybody eat, and it looks exactly the same thing. And then you look at the costumes, and it is exactly look at the same thing. So. Um, there's so many similarities between the two, and it never made sense. So at that point, I was really really struggling, and I could not even continue to thrive in my job. I realized like what am I here and why am I doing, and I don't even love what I'm doing. So I decided to leave my career and travel to Canada on a tourist visa to start a whole new beginning. And
Mm,
that was a really challenging part of my life because out of sudden I arrived to Canada on a tourist visa, and I didn't speak English back then, and there was a massive cultural shock. And I'm in this country thinking to myself, look, I have 6 months to figure my stuff out. I don't want to come back to Lebanon. And here I was in minus 20 degrees right now, dealing with winters that I've never dealt with, where there's lack of sunlight, there's no familiarity whatsoever to what I'm used to. And 3 months later, I'm in this dark basement, the same place where I watched that video of Jack Roos talking. And a few weeks after that night, my former partner, she was absolutely desperate because she saw that I'm doing everything in my power to help improve my mental state, but then I'm literally suicidal depressive. And she did something brilliant. She said to me, "Hey, pack your stuff. We're going to volunteer on an organic farm in rural Quebec with indigenous people." She literally found a website called Woofing where you could apply to live with farmers. You go and help them, and in exchange, you live on their land and you get offered accommodation and food. So, as a deeply depressed person that is unable to even leave the bed, hearing this, I was like really worried. My face turned pale yellow, and I'm like, going to a farm? Like, how's this going to help me? But I had to trust her because she was the only person in my life that knew about my state. So we drove for 7 hours from Ontario to Quebec. And when we arrive at night, I was blown away, but also like really shocked because we arrived to this place, there's no electricity, no artificial light. and a canopy of twinkling stars so absolutely brilliant. It was like, whoa, like I haven't seen something like this since like I was 3 years old. We put up our tent, I go to bed, and May 2017, I wake up on day one and I feel literally like a truck has ran over me. Like I don't want to leave the tent. I'm feeling so deeply depressed. And the thought of going outside and being around other farmers who will ask me like how you feeling and what do you do was absolutely terrifying. Like I don't want to be out. But then on day three, something absolutely miraculous happens. And I did not expect it. I wake up with no alarm. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I literally feel like electricity was moving through my body. Like I could not comprehend it. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I noticed that there was a smile on my face that I can't shake. And I'm looking at my former partner, and it felt like I'm looking at a piece of art for the first time ever in in our entire like time together. So I was like, whoa, like my body feels alive. I literally like sneak out of the tent because she was sleeping. I look around and the world around me was glowing with the magical light of the dawn. The birds are singing. It's absolutely mesmerizing. And in this moment, it literally felt like life was moving through me once again after many years of being dead on the inside. It felt like, wow, I am awake. I am alive. And I was literally tearing up. And here's what absolutely blew my mind. The night owl in me, who used to stay up until 4 a.m. every night, is now falling asleep shortly after the sunset and waking up at 4 a.m. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, it brought me chills. And then there's this like moment on the farm that completely dismantled everything I knew about myself. I was literally on my knees and hands, kneeled down, wearing the crops. The farmer walks over to me and he places his warm hand on my shoulder. He looks me in the eye. He had like this very gentle like look about him. And he said, Rudy, like many volunteers come here to the farm, but I'm absolutely impressed with the level of focus that you show on the field. And I was like, no, like literally, like, I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but in my body, I felt like I was disappearing into nothingness and coming back into my body at a thousand times per second. And like, I was literally like seeing my old paradigm of the kid who can't focus being dismantled. And out of sudden, there was a birth of a new possibility that was so frightening to me to acknowledge, but then also so exalting to feel into the reality of it. Because out of a sudden, I was like, oh my God, there is a possibility that is shaking me to my core that everything I thought to be wrong with me, my ADHD, my depression, my chronic fatigue, it wasn't about me. For the first time ever, there's a possibility that, whoa, it could be that it's my life environment. And I was like, wow.
Amazing. And also, when you experience it, it's like it changes everything. I know people that have had the opposite, normal their whole lives. A mom I worked with, actually, she had this, and then she had a new baby, and then they moved into a new house. And then suddenly she had all the horrible symptoms of postpartum depression and all this stuff. And then we are talking and working together, and she's like, oh my gosh, all
Mm.
this started, we moved into the new house that has all these LEDs. Our old house just had normal lights, and the new house is very energy efficient. So she had to go and turn off all the lights, replace all the lighting, and then she started feeling better. And she thought, "Oh, I had a baby, now I'm just broken." When it was really just what else had changed in that time was the lights.
Yes, I mean, this is definitely a much favorable condition to be in because I do recognize and notice that one of the most difficult parts about anything in life is when you are stuck in a little box and your frame of life is coming through that box, so much so that that which you experience and which you feel is limited to what's inside of that box, and you have
Mhm.
no idea what could be outside of that box. And it's not until you somehow have an epiphany or a disrupting event in your life that suddenly snap you out of that box into a new experience that you get to experience what it feel like, what it sounds like, what it's like to be outside. And in my situation, I had normalized feeling how I was feeling until I entered this new environment on the farm where I looked around and every farmer around me had such a level of light in their eyes that I've never seen in the community of folks who were doing all these different complicated things and dogmatic health practices. And I realized, whoa, like none of these farmers are taking stacks of thousands of dollars of supplements. None of them are obsessing over what to eat and what not to eat. And the one common thing between all of them is that every farmer there woke up naturally before the sunrise. They spent
Mm.
the majority of their day in contact with the natural elements of nature, like light, like water, like being grounded to the earth, and they ate their meals at the same time every day. They fasted when the sun is down. They were never exposed to artificial light after the sunset. And their food came from the environment under which the sun was hitting that food. So there was a consistent light signaling between the food that they ate and the sun that they lived under. And that in that moment, I was like, whoa, could it be that simple? And my brain was like really denying the simplicity of it. I'm like, no, it's no freaking way. It's that simple.
Right. And so obviously you're not still out on that, farm in Canada, though. So you f are we're everyone, we're all working together on this to find ways to bring those elements into cities, towns, everyday life. Some things, some institutions are going to have to change to make this possible, but as individuals, we have some power, some abilities, right? Did you experience a relapse after you left the farm, or was it like you just carried forward and just
Yeah,
have been glowing
that's.
ever since?
I wish that would have been a really happy story and happy place to be. But the reality is, like, after being on this farm for 6 weeks, I returned back to the city, and within a matter of a few weeks, literally it all comes crashing back at me, like the fog, the exhaustion, the night owl tendencies. Out of sudden, I found myself again being sucked into the vortex of being on my phone until 2 a.m., waking up feeling exhausted. And then a light lit up in my head. I'm like, whoa, I'm coming back to the old self. And I realized, no, I'm not going back. Like, there's no freaking way I'm gonna revisit that state again. So I realized I need to go deeper. And in this moment, I literally turned almost into a mad scientist with with the farm becoming my laboratory. And for over 4 years, I kept traveling back between the farm, living with indigenous people in a way that is in complete alignment with nature's light and dark cycles, and then traveling back to the city. And I was documenting the contrast and the shift in my sleep, in my energy, in my mood. And during those 4 years, I completely devoted most of my time to studying the research and devouring the books so I could study and understand more like the science of light and potentially be able to solve the light problem in my own life. So I started doing a lot more research. And one of my observations were that anytime I went back to the city, although I kept consistent with my sunlight exposure and it felt really good, eventually, within a matter of few weeks, the artificial light in my environment will kind of creep in slowly and silently, and it will completely dismantle my rhythm. So much so that I would stay up later, and I start eating food at the wrong time, and I start waking up early later, and then I'd start noticing naturally that when I wake up, I'm feeling unsatisfied and that my motivation level would drop. So this is what led me to ask the question, okay, how can I solve the artificial light problem when I'm in the cities? So I learned about blue light blocking glasses and I got really excited and I bought 3 pairs from the optometrist office. They were clear blocking glasses
Ah.
for myself, my sister, and my former partner. And we put them on with big smiles on our face, naively thinking that we finally cracked the code for solving the light problem.
Mhm.
But then within a few days, we noticed like nothing is happening, and I'm still like super wired that night, waking up feeling exhausted. My rhythm is not coming back. So I realized, oh man, I mean, I'm an engineer and I understand the science, the physics of light very well. And I'm like, how did these guys kind of like trick me? Because as an engineer, I understood very well that in order to eliminate, like, if you ever remember as a kid, when you mix color together and you play with the color theory stuff, the polar opposite of blue is yellow. So when you mix blue with yellow, they end up canceling each other out. So in order to filter out anything, the lens could not be clear. And the clear blue light blocking glasses, they're a marketing gimmick because essentially they block blue purple light up to 420 nanometer, which is literally not emitted by screens and LED lights. So at that point, I'm like, I started doing more research and I kept trying all these different brands. And I kept like feeling one disappointment after the other because I could not make anything work. And when I got a spectrometer to measure what the glasses were doing, I could see why they weren't working because most of them didn't even do what they advertised to do. But then something really phenomenal happened. I ended up meeting an optical engineer by accident who lived in Florida. And I got to share my story with him, and he got really intrigued, and he had a really open mind. So he said, "I think I could help you. I think I could come up with a melanin pigmentation dye that could exactly do what you're trying to do." I'm like, "Let's go." So for over 9 months, he was working in his lab in Florida, and he would send me those melanin pigmentation dye, and I'm literally in my garage with gloves on, face mask, hunched over, manually tinting lenses from morning till night. And then I'll end up like doing my measurements and get really disappointed because we were really far from where we need to be. And after 9 months of failing over and over again, bam, success. We literally were able to produce the first pair of glasses that literally filtered the right amount of light at the right time of the day. And I was really excited because for the first time ever, I had a tool that helped me be in the city and protect my hormones and sleep when I'm there. And to be honest, at that point, I had no freaking intention of starting a business. I didn't have a phone or
Oh.
even a laptop or a bank account, and I was completely off the grid, living with farmers and doing my own stuff. Yeah.
Well, that obviously didn't last because you have this and you went through so much work. So, of course, eventually you have to share it with the world, which you've done to great success now. VivaRays is extremely well known in, the light glasses world, circadian rhythm world. And so you have, grown a great company, great team. Yeah, great reputation.
Thank you. Yes, and to be honest, it's like if it wasn't for my sister Joy, like none of that would have occurred or happened. Because
Mhm.
the way it ended for me is okay. I saw the impact on myself, and I was so absorbed with the idea of like the research and living on farms and helping farmers. The last thing that could occur on my mind is that I would start a business, but I did have the desire to help others. So I did notice that all of my friends and family, I'd be having conversations with them. They'd share about their anxiety or their depression or their acne or their digestive issues. And then as I dug deeper, I'd realize that it all boiled down to one thing. They had a disrupted circadian biology.
Mhm.
All of them weren't exposed to any sunlight during the day and they were overexposed to a lot of artificial light at night.
Yep.
So I ended up making like 30 pairs, and I started handing them over to friends and family. And I'd share with them what I now call like 7 steps to harnessing the power of light. And every time I was literally blown away by how quickly they began to heal and reverse their issues. And the first person that literally like blew my mind was my mother, because at that
Aw.
point in her life, she was living in Lebanon, I was living in Canada. And every time I called her on the phone, I would feel like a sense of emptiness inside of her that I've never encountered in my mom growing up. She was one of the most joyful, giving, loving people that I've ever been around. Uh, but uh, for the past 8 years from that point on, she had been struggling with insomnia, and she
Mm,
was barely sleeping 2 hours every single night.
mm,
So, as you can imagine, her cup was absolutely empty. And because she was in a circle of women who also were limited by their thinking, everybody around her had thought that that's natural. You're growing up. There's no escape from that. That's the
mhm.
price you pay for aging. And even her doctor had tried different modalities with her and ended up convincing her that she needs to take sleeping pills or to drink alcohol before bed so she can fall asleep.
I've heard
So
of this.
it's the most worst and like absolutely terrible advice that you could ever give somebody. But that was essentially her reality. And at that point, when I realized that she had a massive light problem, I essentially sent her a pair of glasses and I said to her, "Listen, mom, here are a few steps, simple steps that you could try doing during the day, and let's see what happens." So she was eager and she started going outside every morning, catching the sunrise, taking sun breaks throughout the day, and then blocking artificial light after the sunset by wearing the VivaRays.
Mhm,
And within a matter of few weeks, I believe, she calls me back. I was on a farm and I was in a place where I had very limited access to Wi-Fi, so I hadn't spoken to her for some time. And then I go with her on this video call, and I'm thinking to myself, is there something off with my Wi-Fi? Because like my mom's face looked like so glowing and radiant. And I'm thinking like there must be a glitch in the Wi-Fi. Like it must be that I'm saying something wrong. And then my mom had like the biggest smile on her face, and she's sharing with me that she's literally sleeping 8 hours every single night, and she's feeling like the absolute best she had ever felt since she was 35. Um, so I think like circadian biology is a topic that is very underlooked, and it's like first principle foundational uh, topic that essentially impact every aspect of our life.
mhm. Yeah. Yep, I would agree with that absolutely because 'cause I've seen it in so many different cases um yeah, and at all different ages and stages. Like, I work with so many moms, so, like, in the chat here coming in, all these moms, uh they're dealing with their whole family, right? They're in that spread, the mother role, right? You're caretaking the older generation, you're caretaking the younger generation, you have a lot of pressure on you in that time, and so anything that can make that a little bit easier, make you be able to rest at night, it just makes such a huge difference, and, um, yeah, we see it I see it in the birth suite too and with birth workers, because 'cause they're all exposed to so much artificial light. They're like, "Oh, I need to go have my baby," so they jump into the hospital, which is then a massive blue light, which suppresses melatonin, which suppresses contractions and makes them feel more painful. So, as you can see the C-section rate actually rising as the artificial light gets more and more intense,
Yes.
um, partially because of the pain, and so women are actually starting
Mm,
to, like, they're going to the hospital and they're putting their light glasses on so that they're not going to be exposed to that and have at least one less effect, or a lot of the home birth movement is always
yes.
growing. And the homeschool movement too for the kids because they see that like, "Okay, I'm gonna send my kid to school and blue blocking glasses," right? But then are they actually high quality? Are they actually working and all of that? So that's one of the other things I love about your company where I'm excited to share with the moms here because they're in that state of they need, adult glasses for themselves. They might need them for their children as well. And you guys also made a line that, works for the very young people. So it's going across the whole spectrum. Of course, the little babies can't wear glasses, and that's where tuning the environment is the best. But it's
Yes.
society as a whole has to catch up for that to happen. We can do it in our homes, but for travel, institutions, workplaces, all of that, we need other tools.
Yes, absolutely. And as you mentioned, the hospital environment, I can't help but think and bet with you that perhaps that architectural engineer who designed the school and the prison is exactly the same one who also designed the freaking hospital.
Yeah, and they put the little, like, wrists on you so that you have a buzzer, you can't go past the doors. I can't believe it. I was, so upset when I found out. Moms go in there, and then they're not allowed to go out, even though there's a courtyard right there, but they're not allowed to leave. They're not allowed to take their babies outside, and then they'll tell them how many days they have to stay before they can go home.
Yes.
It is very, intense. So, there are places that are starting to push back on that, and I'm starting to see stories because like you said, it's easy, and I'm one of those people also who just has dove so much into the research and, I've read stacks and stacks and stacks of papers like, "Oh, this correlates." What are you looking at? It probably correlates to circadian biology.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think, like, in so many ways, like, as human beings, a lot of our creations are essentially an extension of what is happening on the inside of us. Like, when we create a product or we create anything in life, it's merely an extension of who we are in that moment. And it's sad because when we look at the state in which humanity is in right now and all of the things that we are creating, which end up being really destructive to our biology, it just signals the state of consciousness that humanity is in, and how all this destructive, death giving creations are merely an extension of the state of consciousness that the humans who are creating it are in. Um, so yeah, you can't help it but think about how sad it is to be um, essentially in a society where people are completely disconnected from themselves and disconnected from nature, and oftentimes in the whole conversation around nature, I find that most of us don't realize that when we speak about nature, we are speaking about our nature. We are speaking about God's nature. God's nature, our nature, and nature is the very one thing, and it's the one and the same. And when we are disconnected from nature, it's also an indication that we are disconnected from God and that we are ultimately disconnected from ourselves. And in that state, our creations are unbalanced creations that lack that fundamental balanced rhythm within them. Because when you look at nature and you look at every entity in nature, you realize that every aspect of nature is composed of opposing forces that are interchanging in equal giving and re-giving. And more so when we look at humans, even the way we walk is essentially like dividing the one into two, and there's an equal giving and re-giving between our left and right side. Even the way we breathe, we inhale and exhale, and there's an equal and opposite giving and re-giving between the two. And when you think about the process of breathing, if we're constantly breathing in all of the time but never breathing out, what ends up happening? Our lungs would explode and we would die. Now, we've never taken the time to think about this from the perspective of light and darkness, because those are two opposing forces that exist in nature that control timing and that control rhythm. And that law of rhythm control every aspect of our biology. And when we are constantly essentially ignoring the importance of balancing that giving and re-giving between those two forces, and end up creating environments that are deprived and completely empty of that balance. And then we wonder, like, why are we feeling sick? Well, we are feeling sick because those environments are completely deprived from that fundamental rhythm that exist in all of nature and that is part of our nature as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an important thing to give, context to all of it. That yeah, we know we can't just stay awake, but it's all like productivity, predictability, and wanting to. I think there's a lot of urge to control um into it, and so when the LEDs came about, they were like, oh, it's energy efficient, we're going to use less energy. That's not what happened. They just made everything brighter. They just, like, overtook the darkness. So, now in the cities, you look up and you can't even see the stars, whereas, like, if they just covered the lights, we could still get where we need to go, but when you look up, you could still see the sky, and there's, a lot of heritage in the sky, and there's a lot of that sense of awe and connection that would happen on a nightly basis if, I like to say when everyone gets their head straights and retrofits everywhere to have that better circadian, all of the entrainment factors that are the bright and the warmthness in the day, because it also ends up in the seasonal swing too, where people end up pushing back on winter biology, and people really dislike winter, but then it's summer and they're like, "Oh no, I hate summer too." And like, "Oh, I can't go out because it's too hot," right? So like no matter which season it is, like there are people that will have that experience of like hatred and aversion and wanting to keep it away from themselves and just have like that perfect static comfort. And there's a bit of discomfort with embracing true darkness or embracing the true brightness there. And people, the sunglasses that people wear because they think that they can't handle the brightness of sunlight because they didn't catch the first morning sunlight, and so their pupils are still constricted, and then they go straight into the bright day. And a
Yes.
lot of people are so amazed when they're like, "Oh, yeah, I do know what that feels like for my pupils to hurt." Like, "Oh, that's a biological signal." Like, yes. Yes, that's your body telling you something.
Yes. Also, it's very important to realize that our ability to absorb light is equal to our ability to soak the darkness.
Mhm,
So the more we take away from the times when we are essentially in darkness, and we replace that with bright artificial lights at night, then essentially we're taken away from our ability to wake up the second morning and be light hungry and absorb that light properly.
mhm,
So people will start experiencing headaches or intensity when they're out in the sun. But yeah, no wonder why, because like they flooded their mitochondria with LED lighting that essentially increases inflammation at a time when those engines within the cell are supposed to have the space to clean inflammation, and out of a sudden you wake up the second day and you're still very inflamed, not ready to metabolize life, and then you want to hide and you want to put sunglasses and you want to be in an environment that is not as bright.
mhm. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And when you're immersed in it and no one's talking about it, it's easy to just think that all of that stuff is normal and that you're the one that's broken. Whereas if you would like look out in nature and an animal, like if I see a plant that's wilting in the sunlight, I'm not thinking like, what's wrong with that plant? I'm thinking like, oh, does that plant need some water? you know, oh, should I weed around that plant so that the sun, like, oh, that other, that weed is blocking. I'm going to pull that weed so that that one has, more energy. You would think of it in terms of what's happening with the whole environment. But then when you see a woman who's struggling with infertility, it's like, oh, well, what's wrong with you? Not what's going on in your environment, which you would do, if you saw any kind of, yeah, if you just think about like a natural system.
Yeah, I was recording a podcast today with Dr. Tanya, and we were talking about fertility from the lens of light, and I couldn't help but remember a conversation that I had with a dear friend about 5 years ago. She's a health expert, and I won't say her name to respect her privacy. But she at the time she had built like a really powerful and successful business around the carnivore diet and around detoxification. And she just started turning her attention towards light. So she reached out to me, and she wanted to have a conversation about our glasses and about the mitochondrial and the circadian story. And at the time, she was 42 years old. And somewhere in that call, she started softening. And I could tell that there's a level of vulnerability in her voice. And she started sharing with me something that I believe that she hadn't planned to tell me on a call like this. But she said, Rudy, it's been really difficult for me. I've been trying to have a child for about 5 years. And it's been a big struggle in my life. And I could tell from the tone of her voice that she was really desperate, that she was really hopeless. And she went on to share that she does all the right things. She eats all the cleanest, best diet. She does all the detoxification protocols. And I could tell that she's probably one of the most disciplined people I've ever spoken to. Then she said to me, you know, Rudy, the more I talk to people like you in the circadian space, the more I'm starting to realize that more than anything else, what I'm going through right now, that lack of fertility, is mostly a circadian and a light problem more than anything else. And in this moment, you know, I was thinking to myself, she's damn right. And I couldn't help but, you know, go deeper with her and start talking about light as being the most fundamental force that impact us on a cellular level. And I was sharing with her, look, if there's anything correct in the evolutionary biology story, what fascinates me is like we go back billions of years and life on this planet seemed to appear as a single cell organism in the ocean thriving in darkness. And then it wasn't until one bacteria made its way up to the surface and start absorbing sunlight that one of those bacteria engulfed another one. And this led to a partnership that would end up powering the need of this complex body and vessel that we all live in. And this was called the mitochondria. And, you know, those are the tiny little engine within every cell that are breaking the food that we eat into electrons and protons and driving those electrons and that transport chain to make energy. And I was like telling her that everything that we do literally runs on that thinking, moving, healing. And I said, your fertility and your ability to produce a baby runs on your mitochondria's ability to produce energy.
Mhm.
And a light lit up in her head because I was telling her, like, your egg is the most mitochondria dense cell in the human body. Like 100,000 to half a million mitochondria inside one single cell in the egg. And I said to her, like, why do you think nature has done it that way? Like, why that many mitochondria in the egg? And she said, you know, because the egg has to spark the power and to give the power to the very beginning of a human life. That takes a ton amount of energy.
Mhm.
So
Does.
so that's like on one side you have this, but also like on the other side you start realizing that um Dr. Douglas Wallace, he said like 90% of modern chronic diseases today originate not from the nucleus genome,
Yep.
but from the mitochondrial genome.
Yep.
And one big reason the mitochondria lose their efficiency is not what most people think they were. Like most people looked at the mitochondria and they said, okay, mitochondria break down food into energy, and therefore, if we have a mitochondrial problem, it's a food problem. But then it turns out, okay, it's a light and darkness problem. And you know, you mentioned plants, and I like to think about Albert Einstein's photoelectric effect, which show how light excites electron and create electricity. And this is literally how plants photosynthesize and how solar panel work. But like when you start realizing, oh my God, this is how our cells work on the inside.
Mhm.
And you realize that sunlight essentially excites electrons in the electron transport chain, and that most of our energy doesn't come from food.
Yeah.
It essentially comes from light. And that little engine within the cell that is making our energy is also constantly making what we call reactive oxygen species. And this is literally heating up that engine. So that engine literally requires a cooling system. Now, here's the fascinating part. It turns out that one of the most effective cooling system during the day is sunlight. So sunlight comes in and the mitochondria make on-site melatonin in orders of magnitude that we make in our pineal gland. And this type of melatonin has nothing to do with sleep.
Yep.
It's one of the most powerful antioxidants. It upregulates our glutathione system and it completely mops up those reactive oxygen species as fast as the mitochondria is making them. So this is where sunlight plays a massive role. Now, you ask yourself a second question. Okay, now what happens when the sun is down? What is the cooling system? And you realize, oh, it's darkness, the equal and opposite of light.
Yep.
And then you're like, oh, so it's the absence of blue and green light that triggers the melatonin from the pineal gland, which is not only an excellent and most powerful sleep hormone, a high antioxidant, but it also activates the cellular cleaning crew, autophagy, apoptosis, and mitophagy.
Hmm.
It's
Yep.
literally the main signaling that allow the mitochondria to get rid of old, beaten up mitochondria and replace them with brand new ones that allow us to continue to maintain our energy, that allow women to have high fertility because the mitochondria is healthy, that allow men. So men, for example, their sperm doesn't have a lot of mitochondria density because the sperm shed out the mitochondria so that it could move fast. But what powers the sperm, the factory that powers the sperm, the testes, are highly, highly, highly dense and condensed with mitochondria. So out of sudden you realize we're living in a world where 97% plus of people are spending 95% of their time indoor in artificial light during the day, and they're overexposed to artificial light at night. And this engine is literally running really hot. It's going on fire. It's blowing up everything. And that could manifest in the mitochondria and the eyes not regenerating and therefore losing our eyesight, or it could manifest in the mitochondria and the brain losing their efficiency and therefore running into anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. It could also manifest in lack of fertility because uh, man or woman essentially are not having enough energy and mitochondria to power the process of procreation.
Right. And then, even once conception happens, the next really important thing that has to happen is the placenta has to be formed. So a lot of couples that have really, really difficult pregnancies, and I've worked with these people that end up, they can get pregnant, but then gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, hypertension, cholestasis of liver, like all of these, they're just plagued by these complications in their pregnancies, severe morning sickness, hyperemesis gravidarum, also huge ties with mitochondria. The placenta creates a huge amount of that cellular melatonin there. So women in
Mm,
pregnancy have extremely high levels of circulating melatonin, much higher than a woman who's not pregnant, because the placenta is making it and it's giving it to the baby and also back into her body too. So that really high melatonin is going to peak at the time of labor. Actually, that's when the woman needs the most melatonin, because that's a highly inflammatory. The body's working really hard, makes all those reactive oxygen species. The placenta has to be pumping
mm,
that melatonin, having that really high mitochondrial activity there. And then that's one of the big risk factors for postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis. Afterwards, the placenta delivers. Suddenly, the mom doesn't have that huge source of melatonin that she's been riding all through pregnancy. And then, if she's not using the right lights at night to flip up and take care of her baby in the middle of the night, suddenly she's getting the wrong light at the wrong time to suppress her pineal melatonin, right? So you can see the cascade that happens there. So I'm really, really passionate about couples having their light environment correct, preconception, pregnancy, in labor for that acute time and
Wow.
postpartum needs to be really matched to the time of day for that all to go the way that it's designed to be in flow with nature. And that can obviously look really different depending what your climate's like. Is it a winter baby? Is it a summer baby? All that.
Mm,
So it's really, really important.
that's absolutely fascinating. Yeah, thank you for sharing that piece. I had never thought about it or researched it from that perspective, but it makes total sense.
Yep.
And even when you start thinking about, during the time when the baby is conceived, and uh, you're essentially feeding them, and the process of prolactin, and how it's impacted by the suppression
Mm.
of melatonin, as
Yep.
well as the understanding that anytime you're giving your milk to the baby, you're also giving them all of your hormones.
Yep.
And if you are in an environment at night when essentially you're exposed to all of this artificial light, your milk is being flooded with cortisol instead of melatonin, and then out of sudden the baby start literally going through crisis, and
Hmm.
they can't sleep anymore, they're crying, they're very wired, and it makes total sense because they were just fed a milk from a mother who has very high cortisol at the wrong time of the day because she's exposed to the wrong time, to the wrong
Hmm.
light at the wrong time.
Yes. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then, one of the other things that I was thinking of while you were talking earlier too, which I don't know if you've heard this, but I just was reading about you're an engineer type, a patent that was filed. I think it was by some very young people in India for solar panel that is using melanin from
Mm,
squid ink. Because they're finding melanin can actually convert much better with the solar energy because it can, like you said, it can deal with the heat, it can dissipate the heat. So a lot of solar panels, they're collecting heat, but as soon as it gets too hot, they have to they shut off. So there's this idea of like new technology if we go instead towards melanin with like a biological solar panel, which is very strange. World that we could be seeing in the future, but like we all have melanin, all over our body, right? And one of the other things that happens when you get your circadian rhythm right is then your melanin production can flow. So many people they're like, "Oh, I can't tan," and then they start sleeping well, and then find out, "Oh, I actually can tan,
can't
and I
I?
feel really good." And then you find out, "Oh, well, maybe melanin's helping convert all of the energy for you." So you always hear about women being like, you're glowing when you're pregnant, right? And it's like the whole body is boosting all of that melatonin, all of that light, all of the water also, like, right, our blood cells, all of it, really react to the sunlight in a way that is completely harmonious, as long as it's balanced. Like, you can't like you said, you can't just go straight and have only the day without, a proper night.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of the time when it comes to the conversation of tanning, most people want to like skip the main fundamental and then give me the right formula that allow me to tan and make a beautiful color. But it's all about the fundamental circadian aspect first. In fact, I would never advise anybody to right away jump into a tanning practice and a heliotherapy practice. It's always about getting your circadian rhythm checked, making sure that you're getting a lot of amazing sleep, that you're getting the right signal of darkness at the right time when the sun is setting,
Mhm,
and then slowly starting to introduce melanin building. And melanin is the darkest substance in this universe, literally. And it's a black body radiator. It absorbs all frequencies of light, like in its fullness, on every aspect of the spectrum, and it has the capacity to convert it into infrared heat. And it's essentially our body's natural sunscreen, but that only scratches the surface to what melanin actually does. And a very interesting question to think to yourself: do you actually suppose that humans photosynthesize? And when I ask this question, some people burst out of laughter. They think I'm actually like either crazy or I'm kidding, and I'm not. Like I had not thought this could be possible, but it turns out that melanin is to us what chlorophyll is to plants,
Yep.
literally. And Dr. Arturo Herrera, he's a Mexican physician. He
Mhm.
published a paper in Nature that absolutely blew my mind. He described melanin as the human photosynthesis.
Yes.
And what melanin actually does is that it splits water molecule using light, the same way chlorophyll does it in a leaf.
Mhm.
So essentially, when sunlight hits melanin, the water dissociate into hydrogen and oxygen, and you have like a steady stream of flow of electrons your cells start using to make energy. So melanin, therefore, is the most effective solar panel, and these kids are onto something. It's literally like, again, like that which is within us is outside of us, and like the physics that works on the outside only works on the outside because it already works on the inside.
Right.
And when you think about it from that perspective, it becomes very exciting because you look at the photoelectric effect, you look at E equal mc squared, you look at all these different uh, physics stuff in nature, and then you realize, oh, they're already in you, and melanin is the most effective solar panel, absorbing all frequencies of light and converting them into cellular electricity, essentially. and
Yep.
uh, and the more melanin we end up building through slow and gradual sun exposure, the deeper our reserve becomes. And the deeper our reserve becomes, I believe, the more resilient we are to any kind of stress the body has to absorb. Now,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
So you started your story talking about farming, and I see that my friend Elizabeth Milkmaid just joined the live chat, so she'll love this too because she is spending time. She's working in the field of quantum dairy, which relates so much to all of what we just shared. Like in the beginning, we started farming, but the farming was in the place where we are. So when you're eating, there's like the harmonious electrons and everything. But like animals all have this melanin. So it's not just humans that have this like photosynthesis capability, but also the animals in our food supply. So when you look at feedlots where the animals are prevented from seeing the sun and fed imported foods, like the animals are having mitochondrial toxicity. So I've actually
Mm,
read about this problem in like cattle farming where the mitochondria of the cattle have a high oxidative load that is then passed off to humans who are eating
mm,
that cattle.
mm,
And then the other part with the dairy is that that dairy also has the timing signals from the hormones of the cow. So if the cow is not actually seeing the right light and everything, and then they pool all of the milk in the large dairies. Whereas if you source from a small dairy, when you get your jar of milk, one cow, one time of day, the milking, the signals inside of that jar of milk are all going to be harmonious. So this is actually
mm,
becoming extremely valuable for the formula industry who is working on trying to get timed milk so that they could actually have daytime cow milk for daytime milk when they feed it to babies and night evening milk that has the, calming melatonin, a different fat profile for the evening. So to have like a daytime formula, nighttime formula, obviously the mom, if she can feed her own baby, that's the best. But we're looking at all these things like it's starting to be very like even industry is having to start to look at these things because it's not working out. We have so much chronic illness, so many mood disorders. Um, I was talking with a woman, very high level, super smart, running a company, and she's like, the kids who are coming in unskilled, unfocused. Like I'm trying to train them how to work in my company, and they can't pay attention for 5 minutes. They don't know how to like compose a sentence. Like it has gotten so dire that if things don't change, like even what level of society we have isn't going to be able to continue. Like we're kind of hitting that wall.
yeah, I mean, this is really really sad, and it's also like on one side, like what you share about how the conditions in which the animals are literally living will impact their produce and will therefore impact anybody who's producing them. I just can't help but think that, when we talk about oneness, we just like view it from such an intellectual perspective that like, oh, we are all one. Um, but then when you start looking at simple examples like this, you can't help but think that the pain of one man anywhere in the world is the pain of every man, and then the literally like the pain of one animal is the pain of every freaking living creature on earth. And what you had just said is an evidence of a cow who could have been raised thousands of miles away from you, who is experiencing the pain of being disconnected from God's nature, is literally becoming your pain because you are essentially absorbing that in a way or another via the food that you're consuming. And when we think about kids, kids cannot pay attention. I have lived all of my freaking life being told that I'm an ADHD kid that can't focus just because I'm an ADHD kid, as though I had an ADHD problem, as though I had a focus problem. But the reality is, I did not have a focus problem. And the reality is that I'm on the farm, and the farmer is literally telling me that he's never seen anybody focus the way I was focusing. And when you look at the data, you see, okay, there's a paper that was published in 2024 who's following children living in areas with high artificial light at night. And they found something that absolutely shatters my heart. And it explains everything about the struggle that I went through. Kids who grew up bathed in artificial light had 3 times higher rates of attention problems, anxiety, and depression due to low dopamine in their brain compared to kids who were raised in areas with less artificial light on. So, when you think about this, you realize artificial lights, LEDs, and screens literally have inserted and engineered in them a patented technology of concentrated narrow blue light at 455 nanometer that has been shown to not only destroy dopamine, but at any given point when you're exposed to this light after the sunset, studies have shown that you'd more likely wake up the second day feeling disappointed because this light activates the habitula in the brain, known as the disappointment center. Now, dopamine is a miraculous molecule. Why? Because when you have high dopamine in your system, it allows you to sit up and pay attention, zoom out and see the bigger picture in life, and have the viciousness to go after what you really want in life, like those long term goals beyond short term validation and getting those dopamine hits from essentially scrolling on social media and doing these destructive things, whether it's drugs or porn or seeking sugar or seeking all these like short validation behaviors that give us our dopamine hit. So we're literally raising the first generation of humans whose developing brains have never, not even once, experienced the true healing power of darkness. And their precious mitochondria are literally being programmed for failure before even they learn how to tie their shoes. And then we blame the kids for being crazy
Yeah.
and for misbehaving and for not paying attention. And at the same time, we're literally engineering an environment that completely steals the life force out of them.
Yeah. So, yeah, while you're stuck in that environment, can wear the glasses. You figured out how to get ones that actually block that LED type signal, right? And one of the signs that it's correcting course with dopamine that we see. I did a live a little while ago with Dr. Neil Bulchandani. You guys might want to go back and listen to that one, where we shared about dopamine, because dopamine also has to do with your muscle strength and specifically
Mm,
the diastasis. So I see that problem of the abs separating in women with pregnancy. It should come back together even if it does separate. But that's a
Mm,
dopamine because the
mm,
dopamine also makes muscle strength. So when you see the woman who has the pot belly forever after her pregnancy, the light signals haven't given her muscles the strength to close that. But what he told me that really shocked me was that there are children who babies are born with abs separated. The babies are
interesting.
coming in, and then they're going into childhood and their abs aren't closing. So when you see the kid who still has the pot belly into their teenage years and that kinda creates a hunched little posture, when they correct their dopamine, then suddenly their stomach firms up, their stomach
Mm,
flattens. Like, we all see the flat stomach as a sign of health, right? And we've heard of it as a cortisol problem when fat collects there, but maybe not everyone knows that it's also a dopamine problem. You correct dopamine, then suddenly your abs close back together and you get that slim physique, and you can see it in children too, that when their abs come together, then their focus comes back at the same time.
wow, that's fascinating. I also had never thought about it from this perspective, and I'd love to. If you could send me any resources on this, I'd be really grateful. It's
Uh,
amazing to think about it from that perspective.
yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think we've gone a bit over, so I really do appreciate it. And we'll send everyone the link to VivaRays, back to school sale, all of that. Appreciate your time, and I'm sure that we'll be collaborating again. I really appreciate you coming to share your story with everyone. I'm sure it was very inspiring, and definitely will give hope to people at many stages of the journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me, and it's such a pleasure to be part of this conversation.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for everyone who tuned in live and on the replay. Again, this is Nika with Brighter Days, Darker Nights, and you can always find us on the web, www.brighterdaysdarkernights.com.